You are the congressional correspondent for National Journal, Adam Wollner. Follow him on Twitter at Adam Wollner, Wollner. Who's leading this in Congress for the Democrats? Who is trying to shut down the Trump agenda? Because we saw Democrats actually get it together enough to say we're going to block Neil Gorsuch, and then, of course, Mitch McConnell used the nuclear option and blew that all to hell. So we're sort of in this new weird era of Congress. And while the Democrats seem to have a pretty coherent message of we just want to stop everything that Trump wants to do, how successful is that going to be, and who's sort of leading that fight?
Yeah, that's a great question. Because right now I see kind of a split there in terms of you have kind of the old guard of the Democrats in Congress, who's currently still in leadership positions, the Chuck Schumers, Nancy Pelosi's, who have been around forever. But at the same time, you also have sort of, these rising stars moving through the ranks, some very young senators. You look at folks like Kamala Harris, Chris Murphy, sort of you have a lot of senators who I think are on kind of like a level playing field in terms of they're relatively new to the Senate. They're still kind of trying to find their voice. Kristen Gillibrand, I think, would be another example there of an up-and-coming senator. And some of those senators have been very, Kristen Gillibrand, I think, voted against most of Trump's cabinet picks, if not close to all of them. And the Chris Murphys, Kamala Harris were also in the same boat. And that was kind of used as an early litmus test of your opposition to the Trump administration. But again, this speaks to the state of the Democratic Party at large. That right now there isn't one clear leader. I suppose you could point to the Elizabeth Warrens, Bernie Sanders as sort of the leaders of the progressive wing of the party. I don't know if they speak for the entire party yet, at least at this point. So I think that there's going to be a lot of jockeying going on over the next year or two, especially leading up into the 2020 primary of who is sort of the best at opposing Trump, who is the most effective at it, and who's the most effective spokesperson now for where the Democratic Party wants to move going forward. Right now, you can't point to just one person.
Yeah, I think if there's anybody that's leading the Democratic Party, it's protesters.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair.
And what I think is really interesting about all this is that, you look at what the Tea Party got accomplished after Barack Obama was elected. You have to say the Tea Party accomplished a whole lot, resulting in like where we are now with the presidency and the House and the Senate. But they lifted protest tactics directly from like liberals. Right.
Sure.
Right. Like this is like liberals know how to protest.
Yeah, exactly. They've been doing it for a while.
Yeah. So like here we are, and you've got liberals who are outraged and progressives who are outraged over Donald Trump, and they know how to protest. They're really turning up, and they're really making their voices heard. And I think this purely grassroots, sort of even maybe frustration or anger based movement is really powerful stuff. It's really, really powerful stuff. And that, I think, is going to be the guiding principle of elected Democrats from here on out, is really taking the temperature of your base, really taking the temperature of these people who are showing up to protest. Like, that's where the party is, I think.
Yeah, I absolutely think that's true. Yeah. I mean, even and the protests haven't really let up either.
That's
right.
The interesting thing.
We're in towards the end of April here, and there's a big
there's a science march.
Yeah, the
tomorrow.
Science march is this weekend. The Tax Day march was last week, and I actually happened to be on the mall last weekend, unknowing that there was going to be a protest, and I'm like, oh man, like the streets are filled here. So yeah, but the question is, I guess, how far can you keep this momentum going? And again, this circles back to some of the special elections we have coming up. For Democrats, is it enough just to come close? Right? Does John Ossoff need to win in Georgia 6, even though it is a tough district? A Republican should probably win there, but Ossoff, does he need to win in order to keep that momentum going? Because if we do get to June, and let's just for the sake of argument, let's say Kansas was close, Montana was close, Georgia was close, but we weren't quite able to get there. Is the frustration going to boil over?
Everybody's sort of pinning their hopes on a 2018 sweep for Democrats, which is highly unlikely. We just need to accept that. If I know that the audience is predominantly progressive, I'm speaking to y'all. It's going to be tough, okay? But you're right. At some point, you got to start seeing some wins. So the next big sort of test would be this runoff with Ossoff and Handel, right?
Yes, but you also have the special election in Montana. In I think May 25th is the date for that.
Right, okay.
And Montana's interesting too. You know, even though it's the House seat hasn't gone for a Democrat, I think since the 90s. I mean, Montana it's an at-large district, and Montana elects Democrats statewide all the time. They just did it in 2016. Re-electing Governor Bullock, and he actually defeated the guy Greg Gianforte, who was running for this House seat. So Democrats have a very recent history of actually defeating this guy. And so, and you saw this week, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee is now spending in that race. Republican outside groups are spending there. So that'll be another test as well. It's Georgia 6. A lot of people like to point to that one because it's the type of district that Democrats will have a lot of opportunities in. In 2018, Montana is a little bit different in that regard. It still is clearly a much more rural state. But Democrats should have an opportunity in that race. Again, it's they're not going to be favored. It's going to be an uphill climb, but they have a shot to make some noise in this Montana race as well.